Hello everyone, welcome back once again. Please like and subscribe to my channel. So today we are going to check out a gameplay between Robert James Fischer and Mikhail Tal. As you know, both are former world champions. Before this game, Fischer encountered Tal 6 times, out of which he managed to draw 2 times and Tal got 4 victories. So let's check out this game. So Fischer has the white pieces and he opens with e4. We have c5, the Sicilian on the board, knight to f3, knight c6 and d4. We have c into d4, knight into d4 and now d6, e6. We have Tal expected Fischer to play knight b5, but Fischer instead went for knight c3. Here we have queen to c7 by Tal, now g3. And after knight f6, Fischer knew that his position was better. Instead, Tal should have gone for a6, bishop g2, knight f6 castle, and it's a normal position. But directly knight f6 gave Fischer some chances. We have knight db5 by Fischer. He kicks away the queen. If queen b8 by Tal, queen a5 doesn't help much because of bishop d2, and then you retreat, then bishop f4, e5 and now bishop g5. White is clearly better. So instead queen b8, we have bishop to f4 attacking the queen, and e5 was an alternative, but after bishop g5, a6, you don't go knight a3 because of b5, bishop into f6 and now b4. And now he will not capture your bishop but your knight. So first you have to take bishop into f6, then if you place g into f6, then simply knight a3, b5, and after knight d5 the position is in your favor. And after bishop into f6, a into b5, then bishop g5, and white is still clearly better. So instead, Tal played knight to e5. Here we have bishop e2. Don't underestimate this simple move. It has a lot of threats like queen d4. Earlier queen d4 was not possible because of knight f3 check. Now it's keeping an eye on the f3 square, and if it went on g2, then it wasn't eyeing the b5 knight, but on e2 it's even eyeing the b5 knight. Here if black tries a6, then simply queen d4, and after d6 simply rook d1 and a into b5, bishop into e5. White is clearly better here. You can't take with the d pawn because of queen d8 checkmate. So after q d4, the white is clearly better. If you try d6, then queen d4, and you have to try something like knight c6, but then knight into d6 check, bishop king d7 for example. If it tries to be greedy and grab the knight, then simply bishop b5, and after bishop into d6 castle, white is crushing. So if even queen into d6 is possible because of bishop into d6, and the black queen has nowhere to go. Here Tal pointed out knight g8, but after q d4 f6 castle, he just wanted to save material here. If you try something like bishop into e5, then f into e5, q c4, then king d8 even holds. After castle, a6, knight d6, bishop into d6, queen into d6, queen into d6, rook into d6. It's a promising endgame position for white, but black can still hold it because there is no material loss for him. But instead, Tal didn't see it during the game. He went for bishop c5. And here Fischer got a great opportunity to crush Tal. After bishop into e5, queen into e5 and f4. He is now kicking away the queen. The queen has to go back to b8 and now e5. Here, if Tal went for knight g8, then simply knight e4, bishop e7, q d2. The threat is knight bd6 check, which can't be stopped, and after that, white will simply castle alongside, and the attack is still decisive. So Tal played a6, counter-attacking Fischer's knight, and now we have e into f6 by Fischer, a into b5 by Tal, and here Keres mentioned that knight e4, bishop f8, q d4 was better, but Fischer wanted to grab the pawn, and he went for f into g7. Here we have rook g8 by Tal, that's the only move. We have knight to e4, attacking the bishop and even threatening knight f6 check. We have bishop e7, the only move again, and now queen d4, defending the g7 pawn and even threatening knight f6 check. Here q c7 was also possible to hold the position, but here Tal went for rook to a4. But now Fischer played knight f6 check, bishop into f6 was played in the game. If you try king d8, then queen b6 check and it's game over. And after bishop into f6, we have queen into f6 and now queen c7. Tal attacks the c2 pawn and also is somehow threatening to defend. For example, if you try bishop h5, now Tal's idea is to play d5 and now the queen is defending the pawn. If you play bishop into b5, then simply queen a5 check and black is winning. So you don't want to play this. And castles was played. And now rook into a2, Tal grabs the pawn. And now king b1 by Fischer. If you try something like rook a5, then simply bishop h5. And here you can't play d6 because of rook into d6. And you can't play d5 because of rook into d5, e into d5, and rook e1 check is very fatal. And you can't play queen a5 threatening rook a1 checkmate because b3. And your rook is not doing great here. And bishop h5 is a deadly threat. So rook a6 was played in the game. Here Fischer should have played bishop h5 d6, then rook he1, something like queen e7, queen h6, king d7, and queen into h7, and it's a clear winning position. And if black tries d5, then the same idea, rook into d5, e into d5, rook e1 check is coming. And if you try to block with the bishop, then simply rook into e6, rook into e6, and queen into e6 check. And you can't capture the queen because the pawn is pinned. So Fischer missed this. Instead, he immediately grabbed the pawn, bishop into b5. You have rook b6 by Tal, with bishop to d3, attacking the h7 pawn. And here Tal could have played queen d8, but after queen h6, f5, queen h5 check, king e7, g4, white cracks open the position. So instead Tal played e5, the best chance. Here he was expecting queen into e5 check, queen into e5, f into a5, rook into g7, and he would have tried to hold the position. But of course white is clearly better. But instead Fischer shocked him by playing f into e5. As there is a saying, Fischer said that all that matters on the chessboard is good moves. And he found this one, f into e5, sacrificing the queen. So rook into f6, Tal has to take it to gain some counterplay. But now we have e into f6. And now you can see the g7 pawn is fixed here. And now bishop into h7 is a nasty threat. We have queen c5, And now bishop into h7. Here you could try something like queen b6, but rook h f1 is crushing, and you are even defending the f6 pawn. You are not even taking the rook, but defending the f1 pawn because the rook is not running anywhere. So instead, Tal played queen g5, as now rook hf1, then rook into g7, f into g7, queen into g7. Fischer instead played bishop into g8 himself, and now we have queen into f6. Now rook hf1. We have queen into g7, bishop into f7 check, king d8, and bishop e6, pressurizing the d7 pawn. And here, if king c7, then bishop f5 keeps the pressure on, and queen h6 was played in the game. Here we have bishop into d7, and after bishop into d7, of course, rook f7. Here, queen into h2, rook d into d7 check, king e8, rook d7 check, king d8, rook d7 check. Fischer repeats once in order to increase his time. Here we have king c8 by Tal, and now rook c7 check, king d8, and now rook fd7 check. After king e8, he simply goes back rook d1. And here, after b5, he plays rook b7, attacking the pawn. We have queen. If queen into g3, then simply rook into b5 is convincing. And queen h5, then g4. And if you take, then simply rook h1. And after q d4, you get rook h8 check, queen into h8, and rook b8 check. And you lose. So instead, Tal played queen to h3, and now we have g5. We have queen to f3, attacking both the rooks, but now rook e1 check, king f8, and now rook into b5. Now, as you can see, Fischer is clearly winning. Tal tries to play some more moves, king g7, and now rook b6. Now rook is in the control of 7th rank, 6th rank. Queen g3, we have rook d1. Of course, you can't take the g5 pawn because of rook d7 check, and king moves rook b8, and you are gonna be checkmated. So rook d1, then we have queen c7, preventing rook d7 check. Here we have rook d6, with the deadly threat. For example, black ignores it and plays something like queen to a7, then simply rook g6 check, king h7, rook h6 check, king g7, rook g6 check. You go to f8, then rook h8 check, and after king f7, rook h7 check, and white grabs the queen. So the only move to defend this threat is queen c8, which was played in the game. Even if you try queen c5, then rook b7 check, king g8, and rook d8 check, and it's game over. So queen c8 was the only move, and we have b3. Simply, Fischer wants to push c pawn in the future. We have king h7, and now we have rook a6. And it was in this position that Mikhail Tal the Great resigned, as there is no defense against ideas of rook a7 check, and then rooks get doubled on the 7th rank, and you have to give up your queen. For example, let's play some moves. King g7, for example, and rook a7 check, king g8, and now rook d7 is very strong. And now you have to give up your queen. For example, queen b8, rook g7 check, king h8, rook h7 check, king g8, rook a g7 check, king f8, and rook h8 check, and you win the queen. So it was a nice game by both of them. Tal tried very hard to defend, but Fischer's attack was ruthless, and he secured his first victory against Mikhail Tal. Oh, that's an incredible achievement. So, goodbye guys, that's it.